I would like to first congratulate IHRD, Dr. Arun Kumar and his team for organizing this wonderful conference, especially focused on this theme itself. I have seen many conferences all over the world focusing on generative AI, but connecting these two important areas, generative AI and education, which is a very interesting theme and a very difficult topic to talk about as well. Our previous speaker, Dr. Cliffman, has told that he's not an expert in AI and he wants to learn about AI. And I did my PhD in AI about 25 years ago, and I still feel that I'm nowhere. So we are sailing in the same boat because the field is growing so fast, and every day we are seeing a lot of new technologies coming up, and it's very difficult to catch up until we do a lot of research and follow-ups, etc., etc. So many of you are from AI background. I don't see many hands. I won't ask any questions. So basically, my idea of this talk is to walk through some of the GAI, we call it a GAI, Generative AI technologies, some fundamentals so that you will know what it is, what is a transformer, what is LLM, what are LLMs. If someone asks you about those fundamentals, I will walk through quickly what are the fundamentals. And my idea is to attract more people to this community because it's a golden opportunity for India, particularly our state. As you might know, we have about 60% youth population, which means that about 800 million youth under 35 years old. And we need to educate them, train them to be employment ready. And our center has designed the national education policy, which is focused on outcome-based education with a lot of flexibilities so that students can learn as and when they want, anywhere, anytime. So I was just listening to some debates from some students about academia and quality of teaching, etc. And I think this is a good opportunity for all students to go on your own pathways. So we will quickly go through some of these interesting pathways where we can explore and become our own innovators in our own field. All you need is ideas, spark, then just take off. Even though GAI was there almost 5 years, I would say, technically, transformers, LLMs, then the recent inventions. But why we had to wait for so long to kick off to this level? The morning the minister was talking about a little bit about that. Then we had Dr. Saji, the VC of DUK, talking, enhancing that. It's all about the ability to use it practically. So transformers became more popular because they were dealing with natural language processing, the way we communicate. And GAI made it more smoother by providing nice interfaces. So what I'll do is I will give a quick overview about GAI. I'll walk through some practical applications. I will touch a bit about education because that is what the conference is also focused about. Then I will focus a bit about healthcare research, which is one of my own passion during the last 10 years, just to give some snapshots what AI could do in healthcare research and what's the importance of GAIs in healthcare research, followed by some conclusions. So if you look at the whole profile, technological profile during the last 10 years, we were talking about Industry 4.0. We were talking about manufacturing taking into a very new scale, automation, where AI played, I would say, a minor chunk, robotics, various computational platforms, augmented reality, virtual reality, security, data sciences. We're talking about handling big data. So AI was only, I would say, a core technology or not a main player. But if you look at the last 5 years, especially the invention of transformers, OpenAI, you could see we are seeing a big change in the entire AI technology domain. A lot of practical applications, especially after the release of GPT-3 and GPT-4. Businesses, they are not able to focus where they should go next. There's a lot of opportunities. The challenge is to unleash the potential, how we can use, where we can use. And the faster we do it, the better for businesses. And that is all about the future of productivity, when I see from a business perspective. From automation to making use of AI technologies for profiting the best way, understanding the challenges in front from various risks, etc. If you can manage this, I guess sky is the limit, especially if you see it from a business perspective. So if you're looking at past, the Japanese, they call it as Society 5. They call it the first revolution, they call it as the agricultural revolution, about 13,000 years ago. And the last 20, 30 years, we had the industrial revolution. And today we call it as a AI revolution. So AI is going to play a very big role in our society, in different aspects of the society, let it be business, commerce, education, manufacturing, you name it. Wherever we see some challenges, you can easily use AI and make use of this wonderful technology. So like 20 years ago when I was still learning AI, we used to call mimicking humans, and we use AI for assisting humans, for tedious jobs, laborious jobs, time-consuming jobs. The way things are moving further, I was reading Goldman Sachs' report published a few months ago. 1/4 of current work tasks could be automated by AI in the US. It's a serious prediction. Administrative jobs, 46%. Legal means that even some of our lawyers might lose their jobs. Construction, 6%. Maintenance, 4%. Education, 27%, which means that some of us might lose jobs. I was listening to this nice conversation earlier. And here, I guess, we need to improve the way we teach our kids, from data to information. We should really move to knowledge and wisdom. So I usually tell my faculty, computer science faculty, don't feed them data, don't feed them information, because whatever we teach today, it is meaningless next year. So they should be able to learn on their own, not teaching like giving things in a thali meals. This is all about computer science. If you study this, you have your BTech and you're industry ready for your life. No. Especially in IT, computer science, I tell my faculty that we should train our students to learn on their own. So we should give different pathways how to let them do this. And further, Goldman Sachs report says that about 2/3 of current occupations can be partially automated by AI. So all these are, I would say, very alarming figures, right? So 2/3 of the jobs could be easily automated. And what is generative AI all about? I'm sure all of you know what is AI. So what is generative AI? So it's all about generating contents. So if you look at fundamental AI, it's all about making predictions. Given today's weather, what is tomorrow's weather? Or you see a group of X-ray images and you want to categorize them into COVID positive or COVID negative images. You want to categorize various other things. You want to cluster some data. So these are all typical AI challenges. But generative AI is something we are able to generate contents, something which is not known before. So given a context, you're able to generate a story. So you can imagine all these GPT stuffs, ChatGPT. How many of you have used ChatGPT? Could see a lot of hands. So ChatGPT is more like a text generation tool in terms of contents. So similarly, you can imagine there are tools for generating videos, there are tools for generating images, tool for generating codes. If you just tell, generate a code for predicting stock market values based on historical data and given this conditions, there are tools for generating such codes. So even a housewife can develop thousands of lines in few seconds, provided she knows how to make that platform work. Similarly, speech, research, academic research, there are several tools for various purposes. So GAI is all about generating things which are not known before. So that makes it more interesting when compared to traditional artificial intelligence. So like I said, it has been there almost 5 years, from 2018, 2019. I think at the end of 2018, the first GPT model came into picture, and then if you look at this nice depiction, 2019, 2020, 21, 22 onwards, you could see like massive volume of platforms. And 23 is partial. Probably, I think we need probably 2 more slides just to show 23 alone. This reminds me, I was in South Korea for giving lectures on operating system for graduate students, and I gave a lecture during the first week, second week, third week, and after the lecture I asked him, I don't hear any questions from you. Sir, we don't understand anything of you, so then I had to really retune the way I talked, etc. So I had to go very slow. So my apologies, so I didn't move the slides. So this was a slide I was talking about evolution of AI itself, from agricultural revolution to transformative AI. And these are the various figures I was talking about, the replacement of jobs in various sectors. And this is the AI application landscape, I was talking about text, video, image, code, speech, and research. And this is a slide I was talking about evolution of large language models. So from 2018-19 to 2023, you could see clusters of various platforms based on large language models. And if you look at 2023, you will see a huge leap. And I was telling about that we need 2 more slides just to illustrate 2023. And what makes these large language models work? It's called prompts. And there is even a new field called prompt engineering. In the US, there are even prompt engineers, one of the most highly paid or lucrative job, which is highly paid because it's not easy to make these platforms work. So you could see from static prompts, very simple prompts, to prompt templates, prompt composition. Even there are softwares for generating automated prompts. So that itself is a research area these days, prompt engineering. So compared to AI, how can we differentiate generative AI? So we typically give data in the form of text, images, speech, structured data, unstructured data, 3D signals, various other things. And then you have various models, just like a neural network or a decision tree. Could be any machine learning model. And here we have GAI model. And then you get various outputs. Could be a generated image, could be generated speech, could be generated text. And what's a transformer? So ChatGPT, as you know, is all depending on transformer technology. So I didn't specially mention about ChatGPT, but you could see various other platforms, from Google Bard to Ernie to Hugging, Jasper, Llama, Open Assistant, UChat. So basically all these are relying heavily on transformers. So what you see is a language translator. So you type in French, je suis étudiant means I am a student in French, and the system translates that to I am a student. So you have encoders, so which encodes your keywords as prompts, which is in French language. And these word embeddings are encoded in vector space. And then your decoder translates that or decodes that, giving some importance to certain words. So that is the key of a transformer. So the decoder knows that certain combinations and placement of these words are very important. And then it decodes and provides the output. Okay? So that is actually a very simple transformer definition. And if you see the evolution of transformers, if you look at GPT-1, 2018, it was trained using 40 GB data and 117 million parameters. GPT-2, very similar, but if you look at the number of parameters, it has scaled up to 1,500 million. GPT-3, which was released end of last year, 17 terabytes. So you could see the scaling up. And that is what is one of the most popular platforms, ChatGPT-3. If you look at the parameters, 175,000 million. GPT-4, released a few months before. You could see the scaling further. 1,000 terabytes, from 17 terabytes to 1,000 terabytes. And the number of parameters, 170 million parameters. So you could see the scaling. You can also imagine the computational power involved behind the screen, right? From GPT-1 to GPT-4. So for every prompt you make, you can imagine those massive machines working behind the screen to get that answer. So those who are not familiar with ChatGPT, just to give an illustration what it does. So yesterday I made this query. What is the most famous icon in Trivandrum? Okay. And ChatGPT told me it's the most famous icon in Trivandrum is undoubtedly the Sri Padmanabhaswamy temple. And it goes on writing about various things which GPT thinks that it may be interesting for the reader. And the beauty of ChatGPT is you can tune this. For example, you can ask ChatGPT to write as a poem, or write as someone like a person who is qualified in literature, for example, let us say Shakespeare's language. Okay. Or even as a temple priest. So you can imagine the various ways these transformers could produce information or narrate stories. So depending upon how you put these prompts, what is the most famous icon in Trivandrum? It's a very direct prompt. So likewise, if I say what is the most famous icon in Trivandrum in Shakespeare's language, you might get a totally different presentation. So how GPTs work, I just illustrated quickly, transformers. So basically it takes the prompts and divide the prompts into smaller units. Typically we call as tokens. And then we form statistical patterns within these prompts itself to predict likely words or phrases from the decoder side. And then the system estimates some probabilities. If I have this set of combination, probably the best answer would have this much probability like this. We rank, and then we take the best answer based on probability measures, and then that answer is converted to readable text, and then any offensive language is removed. And this is continued until the prompting task is finished. As I mentioned, there are even softwares for running prompts. So it keeps on doing until we get a satisfactory solution. And then there could be some post-processing, for example, like Shakespeare's language, or a politician's language, or somebody's language, etc., etc. We can actually fine-tune this depending upon how we want. Generative adversarial networks. So GPTs are mostly used for text. Content relates to text. And GANs are typically used for images. So where you can fill in images. For example, you have a photo and some part of the photo is missing, you can use GANs to fill in those gaps. You want to generate totally different image if you have a sample idea based on text prompts. So here we have a discriminator and a generator. And the generator generates fake images, and the discriminator distinguishes between real and fake images, and depending upon the error, the generator still generates more fake images until the differences between the expected and the fake one is almost zero or very close. And then we get what we call as deep fake images, deep fake videos, etc., all these things. So this is generative AI generating a city view. Examples like Crayon, DALL-E, E2, Dream Studio, Photo, Midjourney. So what are some of the practical applications of generative AI? Like we have seen, content generation is one of the important areas, creating articles, stories, poems, chatbots. You can imagine GPT as a bot, and then you can interact with the system for various tasks. Could be education, could be a tutor, could be, if it's a patient, could be like providing medical information, code generation. Developers can use generative models to assist in writing code. Data augmentation, which is very important for academic research, especially if you look at medical research. We don't have many patients or patient data with cancers. Then we can use GANs, adversarial networks, to generate fake images. And we can train the models using fake images so that we can build models, and then we can have, when we have real images, we can compare and then figure out how close we are to the reality. Music composition, fashion design, gaming, advertising and marketing, copywriting. For example, writing catchy and relevant advertising copy. Translation, we have seen a very simple example, machine translation. Scientific advancements in drug discovery and material science. So these things are very interesting, I guess. It is beyond imagination for drug discovery. We have seen our COVID-19 vaccines. Typically a vaccine takes 10 or more years to produce, from design to making the prototype, clinical trials, finally getting all these approvals. But you can imagine COVID-19 vaccine, how fast we could release. So thanks to generative AI. Education and research, enhance educational experiences by creating interactive simulations, personalized learning, virtual tutors. Environmental sustainability, especially I would say climate modeling. When you talk about climate, we talk only about small areas, for example, Kerala or India, but typically it is very difficult to understand how global climate patterns has changed or would change. And such models could help us to generate upcoming patterns in the coming months, years, so that we could be well prepared. Plugins to such models, we can also have such generative AI models as a plugin to conventional systems. For example, you can ask GPT to have a fact check using a Google plugin to verify that whatever the answer is given by ChatGPT is correct or not. Ask GPT to generate a menu for a meal. It's very easy, just write a prompt and then use DALL-E to create an image of the meal, and then you can automatically ask a grocery store to order those things. So you can imagine all these things done automatically. You can ask GPT to release a press release, fact check it, then generate briefer versions for social media platforms. So these are some, I would say, very easy examples. And like I said earlier, sky is the limit. Dive a bit deeper into GAI models in education. So from formal, I would talk about how we can implement this and what are some of the positives and negative things during the next few slides. So when you install such models at institutional levels, we need to follow strict ethical principles at all levels. We need proper guidance and training. We also need special training for using specific prompts. Finally, managing the issue of plagiarism within an academic institution. So we need solutions and debates to these fundamental questions. And from our viewpoint, I've been brainstorming this with few faculty members, and our impression was that it should not be imposed in a top-down approach, not driven by any commercial motives. For example, some company offered GPT software and try this for your academic institution. Or university administration is asking the faculty to use this. That is not the right way. It should be co-designed by teachers, learners, and researchers to have a successful implementation. It also needs a robust process of piloting and evaluation to examine the effectiveness and the long-term impact of different uses. So we should actually continuously monitor how well it is being used. So how generative AI could be used for teaching and research? I guess morning you might have heard from some of the previous speakers. You could even design a curriculum using these type of platforms. Could be a co-designer with the faculty to improve the current curriculum. Could have a generative chatbot like a teaching assistant, language skills coach. You can even read articles in Spanish, get real-time translation. Art coach with DALL-E or any media generators. You can imagine sky is the limit, which probably in a classroom we might not be able to explore to that level, and often quickly. Coding coach could improve your coding skills. Socratic challenger, asking interesting questions, challenging the technology itself. Why this should happen like this? Why not some other ways? Such things a student might find difficult to ask his or her teacher, but could easily interact with a platform. As a project advisor, could get tips at the ease of a prompt. And one of the beauty, I would say, is learners with special needs. You can imagine people who cannot hear can use speech to text. They can easily see lectures in real time. On the other hand, people who cannot see, text to speech in real time. So these platforms could also provide real-time accessibility tools if you use it in a teaching environment. In a research environment, could be an advisor for research outlines, just for outlines. If you go more in deep, probably you might get different answers. I guess the previous speaker was talking about that. You can get interesting outlines. Generative Data Explorer and Literature Reviewer, you can get interesting summary of literature review, as well as data exploration. I was talking about medical research where we don't have enough data. We could augment data using generative AI tools. So while GAI might help teachers and researchers generate useful text and other outputs like I have illustrated earlier, still it is not a very straightforward process. We need several iterations to be in the same page. And the most worries the youngsters, especially the students. They might take these results which may not be right, or even inaccurate and even harmful as correct. And some of them might even tell that these results are better than what my professor would teach us. So there are some challenges. Over the last 6 months, several universities around the world, they have explored the usage of GAI technologies in various aspects. And the initial concern from the academia was that many of them would use for cheating their exams, and then the whole thing will undermine the assessment and qualifications itself. And there are universities which banned the use of ChatGPT, while some others cautiously welcome the arrival. Like in Singapore, the Singapore government, they have built a platform for GPT-based technologies for educators to make use of them. And many schools and universities have used I would say, a very progressive approach, believing students and staff need to be supported in learning such tools effectively, ethically, and transparently. And we even have a country which has banned ChatGPT totally from any type of usage. And recently, I would say, during the last 3 months, we are also hearing terminologies like education GPT, which is actually focused on educational data, or EdGPT, like EDU chat from East China Normal University, Math GPT. So basically, these models are targeting certain category of students. For example, Math GPT is only targeting math students, their pedagogy and teacher-student interactions. And it becomes very easy to focus on. So we have seen how GPTs could help in education in a broad context. And what are some of the implications? Is digital poverty. There is a new buzzing word called digital poverty. Because only those technologies, or only those countries which could access these technologies, I would say the Western world, China, few countries who could access these technologies. Because when I say technology, it's not just software, but imagine those massive computational hardware required to get these platforms running. So only those countries which are digitally rich could make use of these technologies immediately. National regulation adaptation becomes a challenge. Even when AI itself has a lot of problems, generative AI itself is making the problem more complicated. Regulations gets more complicated. All these models use contents from anywhere. We don't know from where they use these data and what type of data they use. And most of these data are used without proper consent. And typically all these GPT models or even GAI models, they are very unexplainable. So if you ask the same question few times, you might get different answers. And why I'm getting this answer next time, it's very difficult to explain. Sometimes I call all these platforms as stochastic parrots. Like a parrot would say anything what you teach, nothing else. So these models are nothing much more than stochastic parrots. To summarize, I would say the contents might violate intellectual property rights, because as I mentioned, these models are trained data from anywhere, any place, and there is no proper documentation. And again, you're generating data based on these violated digital contents, and you have a new set of contents, and imagine those contents. So you're creating deeper deepfakes, more pollution, digital pollution. And lack of explanation, I think that is a very big challenge as well. How the outputs are generated may reflect specific cultural or commercial values in the long run. So we need data protection regulations. We need government strategies from center, state, various levels. Even I think we don't have a proper regulation for AI itself, for individual countries. We are still working on it. And generative AI, we are very far away. More regulations on the ethics of AI, enforcing copyright laws, capacity for proper use of AI in education and research. Like I mentioned, we need to reduce that gap for digital poverty. Only then we can make use of these tools at a bigger scale. So coming to the last part, I will take about 5-10 minutes. It's good. So the last part of my lecture is about healthcare, how generative AI could be used for healthcare research, and why all of us should step into this important area. So if you look at the life expectancy, this is, I would say, continent-wise, Oceania, Europe, Americas, Asia, world, Africa. You could see year by year, we are living longer. The average life is about 80 years. And this brings a lot of challenging problems for our medical doctors. And the cause for this longevity is mainly because of proper care. We are doing regular analysis, taking care of things. If certain things goes wrong slightly, and even we are detecting bad things much earlier so that they can be controlled or eliminated. So which leads to people living longer. And when people live longer, imagine, we also need to take care of them. We have their kids. They will be also probably, when someone is 80, the kids will be also 50s to 60s, and even their grandkids. So you're dealing with bigger families. And there is a certain need for technologies to intervene at various levels. So I will quickly walk through some of the areas where we worked during the last 6 years or so, mostly in focus. So telemedicine, I would say COVID-19 has shown us how telemedicine was useful in various domains, from talking to doctor over a video call, sending patient records, sharing patient documents to neighboring hospitals or even to neighboring specialist hospitals in some other country, to remote patient monitoring, remote surgeries, mobile health. We are seeing a lot of apps these days which really helps you to tell how good you are just by measuring your vitals from various wearables. Nowadays even smartwatches can measure a lot of things. And if you have wearables, you can sense a lot of vitals. And these vitals could be automatically sent to your relatives, to your doctors, to your hospitals, in case if they detect any anomalies. And you can imagine all these generative AI tools plugged into all these areas. Personalized medicine, chatbots. Imagine if you have a GPT, medicine GPT, med GPT, the patient could get real-time information about various health issues, treatment plans, drug discovery. We just talked a little bit about vaccine earlier. Medication helps. So I would say the sky is the limit if you use generative AI platforms for telemedicine. From monitoring patients, we can even monitor wards, even hospitals. Imagine if every patient has some wearables, and these wearables nowadays, they are very cheap. It's not very expensive. You can monitor what a patient is doing, or even a group of patients in different rooms, wards, hospital. If you're managing an hospital, you can actually see the whole hospital in a single screen, whether some wards need assistance, whether a patient needs assistance. Similarly, medical imaging is another big area, from X-ray radiography to MRIs, ultrasound, endoscopy, PET scans, so we can monitor cardio abnormalities, musculoskeletal injuries, various neurological diseases, various thoracic complications, common cancers. So one of the research where we employed generative AI is detecting hematological disorders, because blood cancer, as you know, is something very deadly, especially when it catches when someone is more than 60 plus years old. Usually it comes up only during the terminal stages. You get the symptoms, and then you go for all these complicated blood tests, and typically they take 2 to 3 weeks for writing up that summary, because hematologists, they are not many in any city, in any country, and typically you have to queue up. So the idea here is to assist those doctors, whether we can flag by looking at blood samples, whether we can flag whether this particular patient has irregular blood counts or number of blast cells, etc., etc. So basically we can cut down that queuing, because in a typical scenario, probably we might only have 10% or 20% serious patients. So if we can save those 20% of serious patients by putting them for early treatment, rather than waiting for 3 weeks, then getting an appointment with an hematologist, etc., whether we can speed up that process. And nowadays we have various wearables. Even you can measure pain, and it can flag that probably it is related to sickle cell anemia, a blood disorder. And by doing a blood test, we can easily flag that your RBCs are sickle cell shaped and you have this anemia and you need some special care. Brain MRIs, typically MRIs, by looking at an MRI, a doctor would say easily that this patient has Parkinson's, this patient has Alzheimer's or ALS or some complicated neurological disorders. But what if we can get some insights by enhancing those images? Generative AI. So by enhancing these images, we can actually predict someone might get ALS. It's a neurological disorder, lateral sclerosis, in few years' time, which typically a doctor might miss by looking at a simple MRI. Because MRI itself is complicated, and only when we enhance it using some methodologies, we will be able to get further details. Similarly, MRI images, by using some clustering method, we could get more insights. In this case, we are able to predict whether someone might get Alzheimer's disease 6 years before. So from diagnostics, we are moving to predictive medicine by using generative AI schemes. It's a very huge topic. I could talk for hours, but unfortunately I don't have much time. But there are several challenges, like data bias, which you talked about. For example, if I develop something in Kerala, it might not work in Australia or in the US, because the data might be biased. Transparency is another problem which I mentioned earlier. Why I'm getting this answer now, and why I got this answer for that patient with the same patterns in the MRI or in the patient records. Trust is a big issue, like doctors convincing doctors to believe that this is going to come. It's a very big challenge. Privacy is another big issue. Accountability. The person who takes the MRI scan to the place where it is stored, moving further to various software developers, engineers who might do all this processing, to the designer, to the engineer, to the scientist who might have designed all this, to the medical team, accountability if something goes wrong, etc. To conclude about my talk, so GAI is rapidly evolving and likely to have a profound impact on education and research. That is for sure. There is no doubt about it. Many universities, institutions, colleges are already using it. But its long-term implications for these still needs attention and further in-depth review. You need to rethink what exactly should be learned and to what ends, and how learning is to be assessed and validated. I think we should be focused on values. I was listening to Dr. Shankar's defense against the importance of value of being an educator. So we should be surrounded around that theme whenever we construct such mechanisms. Foundational knowledge and skills, because all these students, when they use all these technologies, they won't get those foundational knowledge. You might be a good programmer, but you might lack, for example, you might not choose the right data structure, you might not choose the right methodology for coding the algorithm. So you might miss those foundational knowledge, higher order thinking skills. So I would conclude that we are at the crossroads where it is critical to ask ourselves if GAI is a boon or a bane. So with that, I'll conclude my talk. I am open to any questions from the floor. Thank you very much.
Sir, you just mentioned that the ecosystem of generative AI is galloping and the sky is the limit. My question is whether it fails the classical Moore's law, when every 24 months the computer processing power will double. Is it that similar in ChatGPT ecosystem, or is it entirely different? My second question is regarding the violation of ChatGPT infringing copyrights. A lot of data is collected from various sources by ChatGPT, so it inevitably infringes others' rights. So what is the way out? When it comes to education system also, textbook making also, it will come to the fore, the issue of ChatGPT disrupting the copyright ecosystem. Because copyright, as all know, is part of human right. All intellectual property rights are also part of human rights. So what are your takes on it?
Yeah, thank you for those interesting questions. First, let me say that I think ChatGPT evolved so fast, or the transformers evolved so fast because of Moore's law. Moore's law didn't work, or it's not working during these years, because now the power is growing every 2 months. So we are getting ample computational power. So that is one reason why you're getting all these beautiful platforms. Coming to your question whether ChatGPT will have some end, I think it's very difficult to say. I think the way it is growing, it is really amazing. And I guess in terms of platform, I think we are already there. GPT-4, I think now GPT-5 is already there, or it's already, they are working on it. So I think platform is already there. Now I think we need to customize these platforms to make use or tailor to various needs, which I think is not happening. And like I said, one major challenge is poverty, digital poverty, accessing all this massive computational power, which is mostly vested to the Western world and countries like China. We are not able to tap that opportunity in a big scale. But we can always tailor to some application. That is what I always tell the youth. We can always develop a lot of applications. And if you look at the application side, I didn't touch much. We don't see many applications coming from India. Most of the applications are coming from the Western world itself. And sometimes I wonder why our youth population is not pitching themselves in to contribute to developing various applications. Coming to your second question about copyright, I think it's a global issue. It's not just in India, but I think it's a global issue. I think we need to strictly enforce our regulations and laws. I think we have the same copyright laws like in the US, but in the US, people will think twice before they do it, because they know that if they do something wrong, that could be the end of their career, or that could be the end of their name itself. We also have that laws, but somehow we have mechanisms to bypass that. So we need to invent some ways how to strictly enforce these laws, and also train our youth, our students, the importance of giving respect to others' work, acknowledging others' work, protecting others' work, and developing our own work. So only then we can stand strong in the long run.
Hello, sir. My question is about the confidence of the generative AI about its generated result. Because I observed some of the times that, especially in the generating of the ML code, if I am questions the credibility of that ML code, immediately that ChatGPT or some other AI is telling that I apologize, that code is wrong, like that. Even if it is the answer is correct, again if I am questions that, immediately they are not confident. That is like, okay, maybe my answer is wrong, like that. So is there any mechanism for cross verification other than manual verification of the AI generated result? And my second question is, your application is wonderful in a healthcare system. Even though Kerala is very advanced in the healthcare system, I think this AI application is not yet implemented in the healthcare system in Kerala. What would be the reason for that?
Let me start with the first question, healthcare, because I'm actually directly related to that. So actually I'm involved in Kerala Startup Mission. So I'm involved in a project with the Kerala Startup Mission. One challenge, I guess, is teaming up with the medical doctors. Like I mentioned, those challenges, the trust, and the various things associated with that. Trust is one of the main thing, and then the doctors also, they should know how they should take these technologies on board once we develop them. And I see that there is a huge gap between scientific community and the medical community. The medical community feels that we don't need this, we know how to do, and we feel that they are going very slow, and they still don't want our assistance. So I think it's a ongoing challenge, and finding those right team members from both sides, that is a big challenge. And in my case, like I mentioned, I'm involved in a startup project where the medical doctor itself is passionate about AI. So, and I am also passionate about medical field. So it's more like a marriage. So we find very interesting when you talk about various things. So I think those type of things should happen in a larger scale. And probably we need some conferences, probably some platforms where we can sit together and talk about challenging problems. Like you mentioned, we have some of the best hospitals in the country, because I've traveled all around the country, and we have some of the best hospitals in the country. But if you ask me research, we are zero. We are nowhere. We would see in almost all hospitals, we'll see center of excellence for this, excellence for that. But if you go one step down, nothing is happening in terms of research. Probably in few institutions where research is focused. But if you go to general hospitals, I don't want to name the hospitals, but many private hospitals, they have a lot of center of excellences, but they do nothing. And I think this needs long-term, I would say, collaborations, initiatives from both sides. So I think one way would be to initiate some conferences, some seminars. But I'm sure these communities will come together sooner or later, because there are challenging problems. Like I said, we have an aging population, and especially in Kerala, we have all our kids in some other countries, and we are all going to be in some nursing homes sooner or later. So we need these technologies to look after us. So typically I tell my students, these are for myself, or for ourselves, not for someone else. So I think it is coming sooner or later, but I think we should also have some initiatives to make things faster. Coming to your first question about verification of codes, I guess to some extent, if you do what I call as prompt engineering, so from static prompts, if you evolve to dynamic prompting, so there are even softwares for generating prompts which can automatically link with these platforms and get the best out of it. And then sometimes you might be able to find better answers. If it is related to some debugging with the codes itself or some other aspects, you might get answers. But for me, GPT is more like a parrot, like I mentioned. For me, it is almost nice. It does nothing. So if you tell I'm stupid, GPT will tell I'm stupid. So where does human stands and where does GPT stands?
So can
all this super intelligence and everything coming in, are you anticipating self-aware machines very shortly? Self-aware, self-conscious, like human consciousness, machines develop self-awareness and self-consciousness. Is it a possibility?
I think there is a light possibility probably in next 10, 20 years. Because then we are trying to bring a lot of things together, from data to wisdom, which is a big challenge. Even if you look at the best AI systems, if you look at various capabilities like emotions, even blinking eyes, all these things are nowhere. So we are still more marketing than seeing real things.
But there is
So it
another,
might take
yeah,
decades.
another challenge, the teachers and the scientists, their brain power, the current brain power, will they be able to match it, or there should be some methods by which the brain power itself has to undergo a transformation?
I think computational power itself should not be a problem because we are seeing the scale, like I mentioned, now every 2 months, the speeds are doubling. It's not 2 years. Moore's law is no more, it is all. So that's why all these platforms are coming up so fast. Imagine so many billions of parameters, such a big network being operational with so many queries coming in. It's massive computational power. The only challenge for us is to develop more ideas. So right now we only have LLMs, large language models, which are mostly natural language processing. But humans, we do things very differently. It's not only talking. We see, we hear, we have so many other senses. I can understand someone even by listening to his voice, talking in the other room. I can understand someone by seeing how he walks. I don't have to physically go and see his face. So we have a lot of other, even parallel. While talking to you, I may be thinking about lunch, what is in my thali for lunch. So we are really wonderful creations. We are machines are nowhere.
Our brains will be able to match a physical transformation of our brain and the mind processes.
I think in computational, if you look at computational power, probably yes. We can scale up. If you have money, if you have resources, we can probably build in months or years. But it doesn't mean that it will be anywhere close to human. I was hearing to some scientist, he was telling, if you compare all these technologies, generative AI, all these technologies, and if you compare to a Boeing airplane, so human brain is like a Boeing airplane and this paper plane is what you call as generative AI and all this. So there's a big difference. Huge difference.
Okay.
Sorry for making making such a bold statement. So that's how we do research. We need to grow. So